Andrew. I'm doing Doug today, and we're for the panel on animal symbolism.
Yeah! So, yay! I'm really nervous. It's my first time at this con. So we're going to be taking information primarily from both the books and the show, looking at the different houses who have animals as their house sigil, looking at how the direct symbolism and foreshadowing has occurred in the show or in the book already, how the biological attributes of the different animals in their sigils may affect how the house was put together when it was written, or how the different family members and how their attributes were put in. And then literary attributes, how this animal has been used in other literature that may have influenced GRR's writing in future events. So is there any house that you guys want to start with? I've got a lot of them on these slides. Okay. How about you?
I mean, Stark is always the fan favorite, right? So you got to go with Stark. And it's either wolves or bears that have to go first.
I mean, always,
I don't know
right?
how many people from Chicago are here right now. We got maybe one or two.
Who's Chicago's? Who's here from Chicago?
No bears? Okay, so we'll start with wolves.
Okay. Who's here from Michigan? Yay, Michigan.
Lions then?
I mean,
Detroit, yeah.
we may never win, but at least we try. We've accepted that fact. Okay, so with House Stark, I had a presentation, but I forgot my flash drive, so I've got it all here on this little device thing, phone. So the first thing we're going to do is start with the direct symbolism of the direwolf within House Stark. There's a thing that's said constantly throughout the show, and it's a pretty big quote that I really like. The lone wolf survives, or the lone wolf dies, but the pack survives. We have seen in the course of the books, from literally book one, they are killing off almost every primary member of House Stark, and yet through how many wars now?
Well, if we go back a lot, but
Yeah.
I mean, there's at least 3 in recent.
The Starks will never die. As long as there is one standing, they always seem to make it through. The other thing, I'll touch more on that with the Baratheons, but the dire wolves that the Stark children get in book 1. I don't know if anyone else noticed this, but the fates of the dire wolves seem to mimic those of the children they were given to. We start first with Grey Wind, right? Rob's, that's probably the most direct symbolism we have. Grey Wind, when Rob was caught, had his head chopped off, and they switched the bodies around, right?
Right.
But Grey Wind was also the leader of he was the oldest of the direwolf pups. He was the strongest, he was the biggest, and he also seemed to lead the other pups around. We saw this as well with Rob. But in the end, he died.
What did you think about Lady? Because she was the first one to go. You know.
Sorry, I love Lady. As far as Lady goes, we have to look at why Lady was killed in the first place. She was used as a stand-in for Nymeria to stand for the sins of another, and was punished in turn by Cersei because Cersei wanted it dead, because Nymeria, we all know what happened. I'm nervous, I'm sorry. So just as Lady was sacrificed in order to appease Cersei's wrath, we see Sansa being tortured and continuously abused just to appease Joffrey and the royal family.
So a little bit of foreshadowing there, right? That was
Yeah.
sort of a foreshadowing element of, hey, this is what's going to happen to Sansa over the course of the next.
Hi, you must be Butterfly. It's okay.
So yeah, no, that definitely was something I saw, was such a foreshadowing element of, hey, the future is not looking bright for Sansa, especially when she's coming to realize that Joffrey, this child, she idolized wasn't what she anticipated.
Yeah, absolutely not. I really did that. I could not watch that scene for the longest time when it was portrayed, even though they did do it a little off screen. Just, I don't like dogs dying. I don't like anything dying, but I watch Game of Thrones, so it's kind of expected. Game of Thrones. Just bookmark every death, and you have a book full of bookmarks.
Right.
Then there's Nymeria, who, have we gotten confirmation of that in the books yet? I don't think so.
What was the question?
We're doing the symbolism of the dire wolves, how they match the fates of the children.
Oh, yes. That Nymeria is the leader of the wolf pack.
Yeah, Nymeria we see run off as soon as shit hits the fan, Arya sends her away, just as Arya herself was sent away as soon as shit hit the fan in King's Landing. And Nymeria, as we saw in the show, we have yet to have confirmation in the books, but I'm hoping that Nymeria, when they meet again, Nymeria is now not only the leader of her own pack, but she's gotten innumerably bigger. She's just as mean as she always was, if not a little smarter. Like, she still recognizes Arya, and they both still recognize each other, but there's very much a, I don't want to go back to my past kind of thing. So we can take...
Or in the show, right? You're saying going out the show here, right?
In this instance, because we haven't had confirmation in the
Because
book.
they haven't reunited in the books yet.
No, not yet. I'm hoping for it.
I mean, that's a good question. Like, do people think they're going to generally meet up again? Yeah.
George said that he referred to Nymeria and her wolf pack as a Chekhov's gun.
Yeah.
So that means they're definitely coming back in the books.
Yeah. Just a question. That was what I was always curious about. Is does Shover's book, do they actually get the face to face in the same way that it happened?
I mean, it won't be the same way.
Yeah.
Right. It's definitely not the same series of events.
Oh goodness, no. Let's hope not. That would be a bad time. But that can tell us at least a little bit that Arya is going to be a key figure in rebuilding the Stark house and rebuilding the power that was lost when everyone was kind of separated and sent away. And she's going to bring the skills that she's learned on her time alone back into the fray. Next one, I believe, is Summer. Summer is Bran's dog. We see pretty early on inferences with Summer being able to predict when Bran's gonna be okay. He always stays by Bran's side, seemingly able to predict when the attack. He's there no matter how many times Catelyn tries to chase him off. And he just keeps coming back. She beats him, she throws things at him, and he keeps coming. And then the one time Catelyn's not there, he gets attacked. We don't know how Summer knew this. We don't know anything. We just see that Summer is able to make sure that danger's coming. And then we all see what happens to Bran. Bran is somehow able to have prophetic visions of the past, the present, and the future. He becomes the Three-Eyed Raven. Summer may be able to walk where Bran is not, but I really hope they don't do to Summer in the books what they did to him in the show. I was really mad.
What does everybody think about that? Like, in terms of the
CGI costs.
CGI costs, but I mean,
R.I.P. Ghost.
Summer going out in a manner to save Bran at any point during the story, is that a viable? No. Is that hashtag poop emoji?
Like, I feel like they would die together.
But it's at the same time.
Yeah, they started together. They went through that whole thing together. I agree.
The interesting thing about Summer is that Bran did not name him until he woke from his coma.
Mm-hmm.
He couldn't decide on a name until he saw basically the heart of winter, and then he chose the opposite of that for his wolf.
Yeah. You had your hand up, Daisy?
Yeah, I wonder if Summer has to die for Bran to become fully separate. I don't know, like it seems
Like if it becomes a tree, you mean?
Yeah. Like it's like he transcends into like almost another world or another dimension. So I wonder if Summer is the final connection to, I don't know. So maybe he could die in that sense, but I don't know if that really.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because especially with Summer being his last, like you said, his last string remaining to the physical world, his last string remaining to the Stark family, to his past, to everything. To be the Three-Eyed Raven, you have to be completely separate. So with Summer being there, let's hope he doesn't die, but it's very likely, especially with GRR. We like a character, of course, is going to die. Yes.
Also, if a lot of people speculate that Bran is our modern representation of the last hero, and in the last hero story, we know he travels out with his friends, his horse, and then his dog will die. So in this case, if you put like Hodor to his horse and then Summer to his dog, then that would indicate that they might die as well.
Yeah, so Bran's storyline is very revolvent around, like you said, the last hero story. Dang it, you took one of my points from the literary.
I've never heard about that before. That's really a good point. And just thinking about it in terms of the phases too. Just Summer as a season is transitional and moves on. So that's.
And an interesting thing is in the books, the Summer refers in the Wolf Dreams as the Prince of the Green, And if Bran gives up being Lord Stark, then that would indicate that, you know, the prince, the wolf prince would die as well.
Mhm.
But if the wolf lives, who knows?
So yeah, Summer's a fun one. Summer and Bran are fun because we have very little idea of what's happening with them, but due to what we know about Summer and the last hero story, we can infer. This is why this panel's fun. It's because foreshadowing is fun. Who's next? Shaggy Dog?
Or are we going to do
You're saving
Go.
Ghost for
I'm
last.
saving Ghost for last because last Dire Wolf alive. Let's go. So Shaggy Dog.
Let's get some unicorn meat.
Shaggy Dog. We know very little about Shaggy Dog and
We
Rickon.
know very little about Rickon.
Yeah, which I think, as far as those two go, we have to take from the show and infer that this might be how he's gonna.
I doubt it.
I doubt it. I really hope not, but
He's
It-
the only
it
one with
doesn't make
active
any sense.
loins. Like,
yeah, he's the only one who can continue. But.
I mean, that doesn't even make sense because Rickon is in Westeros when, when
He's
the
up in the wild.
when the Boltons are going to go down.
Yeah.
The thing about Shaggy Dog is that his name, Shaggy Dog, some people think it implies a Shaggy Dog story, which is a story that just goes on and on and on and doesn't really have a point, which could
it's
mean
just
that Rickon doesn't have a point. I don't think that's an accurate explanation, but some people think that way. But other than that, his color and his green eyes are unusual. The green eyes is a symbol of the children of the forest of having the ability to be a green seer. And Rickon, we know, is one of those who had a dream of Ned dying.
So we can definitely see a little more magic in Rickon and Shaggy Dog, just as we did with Bran and Summer. It's just a different kind of magic. And especially, it's fitting you say that they're linked to the Children of the Forest, because now where are they? They're up, who knows where beyond the wall.
No, they're in Skagos.
Okay, I'm way behind. I'm way behind.
They're on Skagos.
Okay.
And Davos got sent to go
find them.
Oh, that's a
so
scary
he's
thought.
gonna be rowing his own info.
And Skagos is reportedly a land of cannibals. And Rickon is extremely wild. So we don't know what's going on there, except that in John's Wolf Dream as Ghost, he connected to Shaggy Dog, who had been just killing one of the Skagosi unicorns, which are giant goats with one horn.
Yeah, so we might see a little more ferality out of Rickon. He may have gone a little crazy.
I mean, he's being raised by a wild man, so
Right.
I mean, essentially, parented by a wild man.
I mean, and when we think back to how Shaggy Dog was named, it was pure impulse. It was, this dog is fluffy, I'm going to name it Shaggy Dog.
Well, it's the epitome of a child's name
Yeah.
for their dog. I mean, it's,
And if he did truly go feral, if what we can infer from John's dog, oh my goodness, I can't speak English. Yes, the wolf dream. Then it's very likely he did go feral, and his continued that childish survival impulse. Like, this is what I need now, so I need to get it now. This is what I think now, so I need to do it now. So I don't think he's coming back anytime soon. I don't think Davos will even be able to get him on the boat without some damage.
Well, I hope they don't. I mean, I love Davos, so at least I hope Davos makes it back.
Yeah. He might come back empty-handed, but
Yeah.
Davos needs to live.
That's a Shaggy Dog is very much a when's a winter question, unfortunately.
Hurry up, GR. And last, but certainly not least, we have our dear loving ghost, the runt of the litter, the outcast of the litter that grew up to be the most badass of the whole clan. So there's our first connection to John right there. He's not technically their brother. He's not technically part of the litter. He's the outcast, especially through Catelyn's eyes. He is not my child. He's part of my clan, but he's not my child. With Ghost, we see the runt of the litter, and in wolf packs, typically the runt of the litter is killed off outright in order to allow for more milk with the rest, to allow the rest of the pups to survive. so the fact that Ghost not only grew to be one of the largest of the wolf pups, but also has this air of mystery and fear surrounding him, links us to John in a number of ways.
And he's the most, Ghost is the most actual wolf-like. I mean, the rest were, I think their function is more
Wolf
dog-like. Yeah, more wolf doggy. But he's out there actually, hunting in the wild. He's in the north. And
Summer hunts too. Summer has his own wolf pack.
Yeah, that's true.
In there, so. Small wolf pack, but still.
But I guess what he started in that, and kind of continued in that versus getting kicked out and having to form that wolf pack by the circumstances.
Right. Ghost is an albino, which is another Children of the Forest thing. Besides Green Eyes, Children of the Forest with red eyes are also green seers. And we've seen George have, it's a little sketchy, but he seems to connect albinism to magic between Bloodraven and the Ghost of High Heart, who are both albinos and both very deeply connected to magic. Bloodraven is the sorcerer and the three-eyed crow, and the Ghost of High Heart is a seer who sees the future in her dreams. And that albinism as a connection to magic is very strong in Ghost. The skin changer Varamir spoke of Ghost as like a I don't recall the exact term, but that would be worthy of a king to be able to use him to organ to him. Mm-hmm.
So, right, King in the North.
There's possibly.
We could see that Ned had a good inkling, even though he knew, obviously, that John wasn't his son. We could see from how he treated John alongside Robb and even Euron that he saw a potential in John to be a king as well. If not a high lord, not a king so much, but a lord. So yeah, we also see a good deal of independence between Ghost and John, as a side to we saw with the other kids. Like outside of Nymeria and Arya, who got maybe a few months together and then had to split. John and Ghost kind of like have that passing relationship where it's like, hey Ghost, hey John, what you doing? Hunting? Cool. Okay, bye.
I think that's probably a little bit because John is a very talented, relatively talented skin changer.
Oh yeah.
So that connection is there.
Right.
Obviously, that's got a role going forward.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, John doesn't even realize that. He partially realizes that he's connecting to Ghost, but he's not doing it deliberately yet, unlike Bran. But when John had to cross the wall, Ghost couldn't go with because the wolf can't climb the wall.
Yeah, that's a problem.
And they were separated for a time, and they couldn't connect to each other. The wall kind of blocked the connection between the warg and the wolf. And then John, when he's trying to decide whether he should take Stannis' offer to, be Lord of Winterfell, he goes to the other side of the wall to think for a bit, and there's Ghost. Ghost is right there waiting for him. And that's when he decides, no, I'm on the outside. I am the outcast. I need to stay with the Night Watch. I can't take Stannis' offer.
Mm-hmm. So I think we've gone through all the dialogue.
Does anybody have any thoughts on Ghost?
I think there's John and Bran having the most well-developed relationships with the animals. I think that they're kind of a set, and you got to think of them that way.
Mm-hmm.
I think my personal tinfoil is that Bran's fall and recovery is a preview of what we're going to see as John comes back. I personally believe that Bran actually did die. That when he fell, the spirit left the body, and the fact that his wolf was there is what kept him from dying in any real permanent sense. And that we hear that Summer is at the base of the tower whining once in, and Catelyn won't have it. There's the fire across the courtyard. Everybody runs to go deal with the fire, and they leave the door open. The wolf comes in, there's the attack. I think that Summer being able to come in is what allowed Bran to come back at that moment. She was trying to get back to him.
Creating a spiritual tether.
Well, and to get that bond and to get Bran's consciousness back into his body, that the wolf being physically present is what happened there. So I think that's what we're going to see with Jon, is that the last thing he says before he dies is ghost. And what's going to happen is that he's going to be physically separate, like his body's going to be put in the ice cells, and ghost will be separated from him. Whenever they're brought back together, so that's when they'll be resurrected. It won't be like we saw it in the show. And I think that if you look at them side by side, the relationships of them and the wolf, that they're compare and contrast, that's a set, whereas all the other ones, like you said, they're kind of domesticated, they're basically dogs, but those two kind of represent each other.
That's an interesting point, and I can see that happening, definitely more than like a sexy wash down scene with us.
Yes. Thank you, HBO, for something we didn't want to
Was there
read.
one more,
Yes. See where Jon saw ghosts with red eyes, like the albinos, and he immediately thought the gods would, and that's why if I take Samson's offer, I have to tear out my dad's gods would. You know, ghosts is from the old way, and I can't. You know, just helps him remember who he is.
It's Jon's connection to the old god. Jon is the only one of Ned's children, quote unquote, who does not worship the old gods and the new. He is purely old gods, and that connection is very much represented in Ghost.
So I think, yes.
What do you guys think of the idea of using the dire wolves as sort of a metaphor for swords for the Stark children?
Well, I
like
mean,
in lieu of them having ice is gone now, so.
Ice is gone.
Yeah.
well, Jon does have Longclaw, but you're in the fact that Longclaw, that Jeor Mormont, the old bear, had it made with a pommel in the shape of Ghost's head, with ruby eyes and everything. It's I guess it's their weapons more than, I mean, they're their weapons, they're their companions, they're parts of their spirit. It's very much, I don't think it's in place of swords, because, you know, Arya has needle as well, but in addition to swords. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Especially speaking metaphorically as their weapons. Once again, we've come back to Lady. Lady's been gone forever, and we see Sansa's greatest weapon is the fact that she can adapt and manipulate just as easily as Cersei can, since she's learned how to do that from Cersei. In Nymeria's sacrifice, she became a pawn, and the ability to manipulate through loss, to change a situation through loss and overcome it. That became Sansa's greatest weapon, is the ability to adapt. Same with Nymeria. It not only was needle, but it was everything she learned. Her time with the Faceless Men, her time learning how to fight outside of dancing.
Right, and even when Arya's blinded, every night she dreams through Nymeria's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So that helps keep her, you know, connected to herself. Even though the Faceless Men want her to become no one, the wolf, the dreams, the everything, they keep reminding her she's Arya and she can't give that up.
And I see like the metaphor, you know, and a sword can be used to attack or defend, right? So, you know, you have obviously clear, you know, with Grey Wind being used to physically attack people, you have that side, you have that with Ghost as well, but then, you know, with Lady's sacrifice and with Summer and with, you know, the scenario where you know, Bran was saved. I mean, these all come back to defending the children, which is an interesting, you know, two sides of it. Sort of like there's two sides to ice now.
We are running out of time real quick. Okay.
So maybe we should move on to
let's. I'm just going to run through the biology real quick. So I picked out a few things from wolf biology and etymology that kind of match to the Stark House and may be able to tell us a little more about what may happen to the Stark House as a whole. We've got the pack mentality, which everybody knows happens with wolves, it happens with people, you follow a hierarchy. Although in true wolf packs, they found that there really isn't there's no such thing as an alpha wolf. There really isn't in real wolf packs. Everyone works together toward a common goal. There's the elders who typically will teach the younger, and there's those who would defend the pack, those who would track. Everyone has a role in a pack. but that's really only known if you're, because the typical, you think wolf pack, you think, okay, there's an alpha wolf, an omega, and everything else. And this shows us, especially with the Starks, you have the view of the Starks if you are a Stark, if you are a Northman, you know how they act. And then you have the view from the South, the outsider houses, who think, okay, they must only follow this way. They must act still like the first men. So there's that idea of these are two separate views that can completely contrast each other, but it may change how outsider houses treat the Starks. The other thing we've seen, wolf packs are one of the only species in the animal kingdom to take in other species' pups or cubs or human children. We've seen wolf packs adopt human children, actually creating feral children, but they're the only species that has outer species adoptions, kind of. They take in others in order to nurture, and my phone just decided to be a jerk. The other thing is their hunting tactics. While typically smaller game, manageable game will be hunted by one wolf and brought back to the pack, if there's something that that one wolf can't handle, the rest of the pack is going to go right up at it. Typically what they'll do is the strongest wolf they'll hang back, while the faster, more cunning wolves will take up the front, and they'll kind of create a wall and keep running. Like, let's use a deer, for example, a big buck. They'll keep running the buck in circles until it tires itself out, and then they'll hit it from both sides. The other thing with wolves is they are one of the only species to hold a grudge. They will remember if a certain hunter, a certain smell has attacked them, has gone after their family, and they will hold on to it through, the research I found said 3 generations of pack. So they'll keep relics of old hunters if they can find them. Like if they find clothes with the same smell, if they find bullet shells, anything like that, they'll teach the pups this smell and relate it to danger. So they're one of the only species known to hold grudges. And then we brought this up while we were talking about the actual dire wolves, but wolves versus wolf dogs. Wolf dogs are, well, we all saw one on Friday. Logan was great. He was a wonderful little boy. They look like wolves, but they're smaller typically. They tend to be more domesticated, whereas a real wolf, oh Lord, you better run.
They're very skittish.
They're very skittish, unless they have the pack. They will stalk you for miles, and they are massive. And now we're going to jump onto the literary things. Dire wolves and wolves are literary symbols of hunger and desperation. In old literature, especially in mythology, seeing a wolf meant that you, one, needed to run the fuck away, because you were being hunted. But it was also a symbol because if you saw a lone wolf versus a pack of wolves, this was a wolf that was going to attack you no matter what because it needed food. It had no other option. It was either sick, it was hurt, and it needed to eat, so it was going to hit you no matter what. But if you saw a pack of wolves, this was a symbol of family, of clan, of connection. Wolves are used as a classic villain in stories, the big bad wolf and all that. But again, these are all lone wolves, which we saw with Rob. He kind of went off on his own plan instead of following what Ned wanted him to do, had said to do, what Catelyn wanted him to do, what the rest of the Northmen kind of wanted. He just went off and said, no, I'm going to do this now. And we saw his demise because of that. Now that we see the kids that surviving are kind of coming back together, we have a little bit of hope that they're going to succeed. Let's hope, please. And the last, there's a classic line in the Chronicles of Narnia that it's to follow what you believe is never safe, but it is good. And that applies here rather well. The Starks will have yet to do something safely.
Right.
But it turns out well for them somehow.
Yeah.
By some miracle of the old gods. So again, the backgrounds of where you're from are going to determine how you see wolves. The Native American people typically see a wolf as a messenger of the Great Spirit. This is something that can lead you to family, lead you to strength, lead you to loyalty. Whereas in European myth, if you see a wolf and this is danger, this is evil, this is something that can kill you. So depending on where you're from and what house you're from, you see the Starks and the wolves as something completely different. Okay.
Anybody have any last questions about the wolves before we move on?
Okay.
Maybe we jump to, I think dragons could probably take up the rest of that time since we're about at the
Okay, yeah.
point mark.
Direwolves and dragons, let's fit the theme.
And I think that's one thing that I've always, looking back, especially since George has put so much time into doing the history of the Targaryens and so much time into the, going back to kind of write in dance to fill in, all those details. Sort of that parallel and, the change in the dragons has always fascinated me, and I've always wanted to kind of reflect a little bit more on what that meant and the parallels there.
Yeah, so the first thing we gotta hit is 3 heads. 3 heads of the dragon, and there have always been 3 leaders in the Targaryens. That's usually. I mean, Aegon made the symbol, right?
Right, for most of Targaryen history, it was just like one king. But
That's true.
the good, I would say that the better ones tended to be groups of 3.
Mm-hmm.
Between Aegon and his sisters, and King Jaehaerys I and his wife and his hand. They were a very, very successful monarchy that they built the King's Road. King Jaehaerys and his queen built the King's Road. Queen Alysanne donated the new gift to the Night's Watch, and his hand, Septon Barris, who was not a Targaryen, but did help develop the King's Road and built sewers in King's Landing, and did a lot of great things for Westeros, as well as writing a lot of weird books that could tell a lot of stuff about dragons that have all been burned, so we don't know what's in them.
And with the dynasty that's coming up, we have so many theories about who Daenerys' other 2 heads are going to be. There's, what is his name?
Aegon?
There's Aegon. Fagon.
Young Griff?
Yes, that's him.
Okay.
My brain shut off.
That's all right.
Something happens.
I honestly think he's a Blackfire.
Oh, totally.
I don't.
Everyone thinks it's a black.
He's,
I don't does anybody in the room think he's not a Blackfire?
okay, so he's out of the picture. If Dany finds out he's even okay, he's even there, he's gone.
Right.
John, now that we know his heritage,
Like it was ever in question.
like it was ever in question, right? John, we can see being the other head. The next thing has got to be who's the third. We've seen, this is a big theory circulating that I personally think it's Tyrion.
Totally.
I concur with that, just because.
Especially, and I hate that the show did this. In the books, he's got almost silver white blonde hair, and one of his eyes is purple.
No, it's
Yeah, but they,
black.
you know,
That's it, black.
they couldn't take his nose off either.
Yeah,
so-
no.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about Tyrion being a secret Targaryen is not necessary. George said that the 3rd head of the dragon was not necessarily a Targaryen.
And you can see that through their history with like good
Right.
partnerships and good marriages and,
Right,
and other
you
things
know.
where they've had relationships that have allowed them to be wildly successful.
Right.
Absolutely.
So, the 3rd head, even though, Dany may think that, Dany isn't even sure. She's thinking that the other 2 heads have to be her husbands because Jorah suggested that to her. He was like,
Tighten your belt, Jorah. It's okay.
yeah.
Tighten your belt.
And we need to keep in mind there that, because George at one point was considering writing the story with or without literal dragons, like the symbolic aspect of them.
Yeah.
Like there's a version of Game of Thrones that you could have told where dragons weren't actually real, but it was the sigil of their house.
Yeah.
And all the fiery imagery and the 3 dragons. It would still work even if you didn't actually have, the show is turning them into like jet fighters that can shoot fire. They're just there for a
They're pure
practical
weapons.
purpose, but the symbolic part is the biggest part of it.
Right. And that's where we jump onto the literary, because there are no real dragons in our world, so we don't know their biology. So we can only go on what we know from literature. I'm taking assumptions from these are Western dragons, because the sigil is a Western dragon, not an Eastern dragon. The first big thing is gold sickness, as it's called in Lord of the Rings, or dragon sickness, or just plain madness. Dragons, the greed that dragons elude from hoarding, from getting what they want constantly, and will never less be satisfied. We see that reflected in the Targaryen dynasties through years of incest creating insanity. We can only assume that this may form in Daenerys. We've seen a few hints of it, but we'll see. Though it has been noted in literacy that the male dragons tend to go crazy faster, and the females tend to have a slower approach if they hit it at all.
And have y'all heard sort of the, I don't know if this is a theory or a little bit more tin hot, that, you know, to hatch the dragon age requires a female, you know,
that whole
a
thing.
female presence.
Yeah.
That whole thing with
versus the male
the
presence.
genetics of the Targaryens and
Yeah.
and I think that's a little whatever,
Yeah,
but we do know that at least there were many attempts to hatch dragons after they died during the reign of Aegon III, and they all failed with either just failure or tragic failure. In the case of Summerhall,
Right.
in which the king and many of his relatives all died in fire. And Dany was the only one to do it, and we don't know why. We don't know why she was the one who was successful rather than anyone else. And she's just working on pure instinct by doing so, by making the pyre and putting the dragon eggs in it. And that speaks something to her magic. There's a quote from George R. R. Martin where he says that because she works on instinct, she isn't even sure how she's doing it. It just shows that she has a capability to do anything. You don't know what she might do. It's completely unexpected. In George's world, magic doesn't work by rules and, you know, exact recipes and what have you. It's all emotional based, and this pure luck and just being the right one, being perhaps the prophesied prince that was promised, is what allowed Dany to birth dragons from stone. And that basically led to her path from then on as like somebody who could do anything. She doesn't follow the rules of like going straight to Pentos. She stops and she frees the slaves. She becomes queen of Meereen. And her path from then on is also going to be, you know, hard to predict. I mean, we're pretty sure she's coming to Westeros between the show and the fact that, you know, it's a story. So,
Well, yeah,
but what she might do is on the way, we don't know.
I'm going to skip a few points just for time's sake. Typically with dragons, we see an attraction in literacy to risk and to power. To have a dragon, like you said, the symbol of the dragon itself is to know power, to know strength, to know the highest place in the world. They, in legend, dragons are said to fly just under what would be the line of space. They can fly as high as they wish and still create a shadow that spans across cities. And we see this in the show. Dany, even before she hit, 10? Robert wants her dead, just for the impact she can cause simply by name. Simply by the fact she is a living reminder of the dynasty. She could take the throne, and he wants her dead for it. And this hasn't changed. Even every small effort she's made has expanded and exploded across Essos and Westeros. She succeeded in changing in a number of cities the slaving in Essos. And granted, it backfired a little bit because that little change exploded across multiple cities, creating rebellions and riots and changing social order in a way that she hadn't expected. That would backfire on her, forcing her to run. So we see an attraction to risk and power, and we see that even the idea of a dragon, let alone a physical one, creates a massive impact that can put either terror or hope in the fears of all men. A few things on what we know from the English language. It's speculated that because dragons are reptilian, that the temperature of the eggs and the surroundings in which they are hatched will determine the gender, or if they live or die. Males and other animals will try to fight that to change it. So it said that under hotter conditions, under tumultuous conditions, when the eggs are raised hotter, they will birth females. We see this with Dani. She is under so much stress, so much crazy, and she comes to her prime in it. Meanwhile, in the time of technical peace, they couldn't birth any dragons. Typically, if the males were born very seldomly because the eggs had to be near freezing in order to have a male. But you get
Per legend?
Yeah, in legend.
Uh-huh.
And if you get just past that freezing point, the egg dies completely. So typically, dragons during their courting would try to lure the female away from her horde, and just long enough that the eggs would get so cold they die completely. So in that time of peace, we have no war, we have no heat in the environment to really spawn more dragons. And now that we're back in a war, we're back in a tumultuous time, we can kind of infer that maybe this is going to bring more Targaryen supporters out, more dragons out.
That's very interesting, and I'm interested in what y'all think the ultimate fate of the dragons is. Because I mean, my thought is, and I've always come into this as saying this is sort of like an elegy, like this is going to be the end of the dragons. After this, I didn't see them going forward after these three. I saw these three as the last. Did anybody see that there being sort of a resurgence and kind of getting to the same level where they were in Dance with 20 dragons, 30 dragons?
I don't think we're going to get any more physical dragons because all three of Dany's dragons are male.
Well, they can change.
They can change?
They
Okay.
can't.
You can swap.
It is- it
No,
is-
you're
it
talking
is-
about the flagrant.
It is theorized by people within the books that dragons have the ability to change sex.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if there are more dragons to be born, awesome. I'm kind of more on your road where
And
it's
I mean,
symbolic.
in all honesty, with more dragons, 3 dragon eggs. Who knows if there are any others anywhere else? I mean, it's a big world.
Right, and there was apparently like the one that escaped from Dance, right? There was like Sheep Stealer and Nettles and stuff, and like could be out there somewhere.
Oh,
trying to
we know where Sheep Stealer and Nettles went.
Well, they went to the Vale, right?
Right.
But I mean, there could have been.
Right,
eggs.
there was an egg that was stolen during the first Blackfire Rebellion, and I'm not sure if we know what happened to it.
Maybe Fagon's got that in his back pocket.
Right.
We also have to remember that Euron has a certain little instrument with him,
The dragon horn.
the dragon horn, which could change everything completely. There were a few myths written in Old Norse edicts that were really hard to find. Thank you, Google. Where they actually had dragons being tossed out of the air by the legs of a kraken. Dragons would fly low in legends to get stores of fish for food, and a kraken would see a giant shadow and think, oh, food. And they'd both be going after the food, and the kraken would hit the dragon out of the sky. Typically the dragon would live, but at least as far as these legends are concerned, if GR saw them, which I doubt it, but still, we may see the Greyjoys having more of an impact on the Targaryens, especially with that dragon horn, than we think.
Do you see that as sort of like a supplement for what they did in the show? Like instead of like Olympic javelin throwing, it's going to be horn blowing that kind of takes one away from Dany?
Yeah,
I think so.
I'm pretty sure because
Oh, sorry. There was a.
Yes, hands.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there's obviously Dany's bonding with Drogon, and a lot of people speculate that Rhaegal will bond with Jon because of the parentage connection. The third dragon named Viserion, who obviously did betray Dany, and then there's a lot of stuff in the book. We saw the show that with Viserion. In the show, there's the dragon horn. There's also a burned head clone who is supposed to shoot the dragons, and speculating they're trying to steal the one. There's a few different sets for Viserion to end up with Aegon temporarily,
you're on.
So yeah, with dragons, it's definitely a fun concept because we don't know what dragons are. And as far as Ice and Fire, the current setting, aside from Dany and her 3, like you said, we had no physical dragons. It was the symbolism of dragons itself that led the power, led the idea, especially in that Age of Absence. Okay, so that's all I have on the Targaryens.
Maybe since we've got about 10 more minutes, if there's any other, or 5 minutes even, let's
Yeah.
just take, if anybody has any questions, any other sort of, or thoughts.
Or if there's a house you want to talk about.
Yeah, animals.
Yes.
So I would be remiss if I didn't remind everybody that Dracula means son of the dragon.
Yes.
And that there's dragon symbolism all over that. So, you know, I'm not happy about it, but I think we should be thinking about the Targaryen, or the Valyrian Empire as it's a vampiric
Oh, absolutely.
empire based on blood magic and human sacrifice. I think that's the reasons dragons died out, is because we stopped feeding them people.
And you know, there was I was just reading George's first book for my other panel, Fever Dreams. So it's like he's already got some vampire.
And he's written vampire stories in the past, and he's really into Lovecraft.
And Bruce Bolton is a vampire too.
So, that's cool as dragons are.
My
world full of
just
dragons.
regard like
Full of
consider like
dragons.
Oh, absolutely.
Die for every
it's not
happy
so
ending.
you know
That's
shooter
what we're
because
gonna
she
find out
has
is
anything
that,
that you can
we have dragons now, but
the event.
Danny is gonna have to feed the dragons people she likes on a regular basis and keep them alive.
You can be our
Yeah, we've already seen locking them away doesn't do anything except for
Making them
You
wilder.
can't just pretend it's not that way.
yeah.
Right.
And that brings up a good point. In Christian myth or old Christian myth, dragons themselves were a symbol of the devil.
And it's a devil's bargain.
It's
If
devil.
you want the power, you have to kill them. You
Yeah.
have to spill a lot of blood to have the power.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Any other questions,
Any
comments,
animals, you can go into Zorses if you want. You know.
or any other houses you guys want to talk about real quick?
Bears, stags.
I've got all of them. Okay, how about the Lannisters? It's pretty quick. A Lannister always pays his debt. The biggest thing I had with the direct is we have 2 house mottos for this house. One that's used in actual conversation, their official one, which is "Hear Me Roar," which explains pride. It's their public image. They want to be known as "We are powerful, we are big, we are strong, roar."
We're golden lions.
Yes, but the motto everybody knows is a Lannister always pays his debts, be them good or bad. So, if you know a Lannister and you've pissed him off, or you owe him money, or you've killed someone he likes, you're gonna die. Yes.
So you've got 2 things on that. It's like, one is to hear me roar. I mean, all of their strength, a lot of their power comes from their voice, and so, I mean, Tyrion's power comes from his voice, and, Tywin is also about a lot more about threats, and he will back up his threats, but a lot of his power comes from his threats.
And in Pride of Lions, it's always the females that do the killing.
Yes. Yes.
Although like Tywin threw that off, right? Because Tywin did a lot of killing, but in this main arc now it's Cersei, right?
And the Lannister pays their debts thing. Tywin's dad did not pay it, but he paid debts for other people. You know, he was a pushover in terms of loans and stuff like that. So I think it was originally just kind of a mocking term that they're going to pay your debts for you. And then Tywin turned around and said, no, it's like, no, we're really going to, you know.
He inverted it.
Yeah, exactly, which is a pretty classic sort of thing.
Yeah.
Gonna do biology real quick. The hunters and leaders of a lion pack are always lionesses. There would typically be, I have the number here, 13. The largest known lion pack was 13 lionesses for 2 male lions. Male lions will defend any challenging lions that come in trying to take their territory, but typically they're there to make cubs and to defend the territory. They walk around creating a barrier, scent marking, and that's literally all male lions do. Although typically with male lions, if they're on the rare occasion there are 2 or 3 in a group, they will always be brothers. Thank you, Lion King, for ruining that biological fact. They're always very, very close brothers, and we see that with Jaime and Tyrion. They butt heads all the time, but at the end of the day, they're gonna help each other out, even if they hate each other. And that happens in real lion prides. They're also because of this pride mentality, they're one of the only species, aside from primates, where a usurping can happen very, very quickly, very easily, and lions will take steps to prevent it. Most of which, if a male lion sees that the other male lion has sired cubs, he will kill the cubs. especially if it's sired by a lion outside of the pride. He'll kill the cubs, but those that are his own, he'll raise very loosely. He'll mostly leave it to the lionesses, but he'll kind of play fight with them. He'll teach them how to be aggressive. Whereas the female lions will nurture the cubs until they're a certain age and then treat them completely as adults. Lionesses tend, now this one was fun because, thank you, Cersei. Lionesses only have 2 to 3 cubs a year for every mating cycle. And statistically, only one of these cubs survive. So, yeah.
I mean, do you think that ties in with at all with the siblings? Do you think
Oh,
that
absolutely.
only one will survive?
I think only one's going to survive. I mean, Joffrey's gone, thank God. Tommen,
Yeah, oh, no. So yeah, no, Tommen, in that 3.
Yeah.
Tommen, Marcella,
And Joffrey.
Joffrey all have to go, right? I mean, that's part of
The prophecy.
That's part of the prophecy, yeah. So we'll see what happens. Typically, a lioness who has had cubs and all of them have died repeatedly will be ostracized from the pride. She'll be set aside. She won't be mated with again. She'll get last shares. She's considered a dowager. She's not allowed to touch anything. She's put out of power, essentially. As far as literary goes, lions are a major symbol in literacy. We see them in Harry Potter. We see them in Narnia. We've seen them in Disney. They're always a symbol of the brave, the strong, the courageous, the leaders. They're good symbols until you flip it on its head. They're also a symbol of that primal rage and anger, the ability to build anger over and over and over and just release it immediately as a weapon or as a defense. Males as a symbol, male lions are the bold, the brash, the angry. Whereas a female lion has always been a symbol of the cunning. It's a symbol of cunning and motherly and all these other things. But we know from the biology and from how a pride acts that a mother is more likely to kill you than a dad. That's why if you guys ever watch videos of people on YouTube with lions, they're always with the male lions because a male lion is less likely to attack you. Unless you're in their territory, in which case, run. All right, any other?
I think that's it. We gotta.
Yep, it is 1:54. I have to go fight things.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all for coming. I'm sorry we couldn't get through it all.